Welcome back, History Decoded. Today we're diving into one of the most controversial and debated wars in modern history, the Vietnam War. But we're not just going to rehash old details. Instead, we're hitting you with 10 crazy facts about why America, despite its military might, lost this grueling conflict. You won't believe some of these reasons, so let's get started. Fact 1. Underestimating guerrilla warfare tactics. The US military was prepared for large-scale battles with clear front lines, but the Viet Cong turned the rules upside down. They used guerrilla tactics, ambushes, booby traps, and hit-and-run attacks, constantly wearing down US troops, who weren't trained or equipped for this unconventional style of warfare. This wasn't a battle for territory, but for survival in the dense jungles and hidden tunnels. Fact 2. Ho Chi Minh's iron will. Ho Chi Minh, the North Vietnamese leader, understood something the US struggled to grasp. Wars aren't only won on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of people. For him, it was a war of independence, and his iron will kept morale high, even when times were tough for North Vietnam. To the North Vietnamese, this was about freedom from foreign occupation, not just a military conflict. Fact 3. US public opinion turned against the war. While soldiers fought in the jungles, the real battle was being lost back home. The Vietnam War was one of the first wars to be televised, and as images of death and destruction flooded American living rooms, public support started to crumble. Protests, the counterculture movement, and events like the Kent State shootings in 1970 only added fuel to the fire, eventually forcing US politicians to question their involvement. Fact 4. The Tet Offensive shattered confidence. In 1968, the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong launched a massive surprise attack during the Tet holiday, known as the Tet Offensive. Though militarily, the US repelled the attack, it shattered the illusion that victory was near. The sheer scale and audacity of the attack shocked both the US military and the public, creating a psychological blow that the US would never fully recover from. Fact 5. The unforgiving terrain of Vietnam. Imagine fighting in an unfamiliar, dense jungle where the enemy can disappear into tunnels or the thick brush. US soldiers weren't used to the sweltering heat, diseases like malaria, or the confusing landscape. This was the home turf of the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army. Their ability to blend in with the environment gave them a critical advantage that no amount of military power could overcome. Fact 6. Poor political decisions in Washington. One of the most mind-boggling aspects of the Vietnam War was the poor political strategy behind it. US officials, from President Johnson to military advisors, made decisions that lacked a clear long-term strategy. Policies like escalation, sending more and more troops, seemed more like throwing gasoline on a fire rather than a calculated approach to winning the war. Fact 7. Over-reliance on air power. The US dropped more bombs on Vietnam than were used in all of World War II. Yes, you heard that right. But despite this massive show of force, it didn't break the Vietnamese spirit. The landscape was tough, and the enemy was mobile. It turns out, bombing campaigns like Operation Rolling Thunder weren't as effective as the US had hoped, proving that air power alone couldn't win the war. Fact 8. The Viet Cong's tunnels were ingenious. The Viet Cong didn't just fight above ground, they had an entire world beneath the earth. The Cu Chi tunnels, for example, stretched for hundreds of miles and housed soldiers, supplies, and even hospitals. These tunnels allowed the Viet Cong to pop up, attack, and then disappear without a trace. US forces were baffled by this underground network, which was crucial in giving the Viet Cong the upper hand. Fact 9. A flawed military draft. Unlike World War II, the draft during the Vietnam War was deeply unpopular and often unfair. College students, especially from wealthier families, could get deferments, while working-class and minority soldiers were disproportionately sent to the front lines. This led to a morale problem within the ranks, where soldiers questioned why they were fighting and dying in a war that many felt was unjust. Fact 10. North Vietnam's foreign support. While the US was backing South Vietnam, North Vietnam had some serious backing of its own. China and the Soviet Union supplied the North with weapons, equipment, and supplies. This international support helped the North Vietnamese sustain their fight, and made it almost impossible for the US to completely cut off their resources. In a war that was partly a proxy for Cold War tensions, this support was a game changer. So, there you have it. 10 crazy facts about why America lost the Vietnam War. From guerrilla tactics to public opinion and flawed political strategies, these factors combine to create one of the most complex military conflicts in US history. What do you think was the biggest reason America lost the war? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell so you don't miss our future uploads.